Hi, everyone. Welcome to the contributor meeting. I'm going to be your host today, Leo. Let's start by sharing the screen. Okay. All right, and starting with triaging discussions, last week we had Michael and Ishita for doing triage. Anything to add, Michael or Ishita?
The only thing I saw was that there's a regression in 2.12 in the application set controller. Basically, if someone has templated the project field of the application, it's going to fail because we now verify, at least optionally verify signatures. I guess it's called signatures on Git commits coming from a Git generator. And if that field's templated, we can't find the project in order to get the allowed GPG keys. I don't know much about Git signature verification, so I may be off slightly in the terminology. But basically, we need a way to allow people to continue to template that project field if they don't need signature verification. But that's the only big thing I saw, and I think it'll affect relatively few people.
And
Yeah,
you
I
said
think
this. Yes, go ahead, Ishita.
Michael suggested with documenting for now, and I agree we could document for now and then try to find a solution for it or have a PR out. So starting with that, we could start documenting it. I could try to have a PR out by this weekend.
Cool. Yeah, I think as long as people understand on the issue what's going on, and I may add something to the 2.12 release notes just to say we know it's an issue, so people can wait to upgrade if they need to.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Anything else, Ishita?
Nothing. I think as there was a release, I don't think there's too much coming up other than this one which Michael mentioned.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so we need to pick up who's going to be doing triage next week. Any volunteers in the call for primaries and secondary?
I can volunteer. Yeah, I can be primary. It's Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, any volunteers for secondary? No? Okay,
Are you looking for secondary? I can do secondary.
oh, okay, thanks, Risha.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so let's go with the topics for today. Have two. First one, discuss enhancement proposals and best way to contribute to them. I see Alexander Korzinski. Are you in the call? Yes, I see you in the call. You want to share your screen? You want me to click the links? Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I can share the screen. Hello, everyone. Let me do that. I submitted two enhancement proposals a few days ago. And these are based on the work I was doing for Priceline, not just me, really, the Priceline team. And the company agreed to share this with the community. I wrote some description, some motivation why this is being done, and shared some code. I wanted primarily to ask for advice about how to implement it generically in Argo, because we have an implementation method that is quite Priceline specific if it were to be generalized, I'd like to ask for advice how this could be done. By the way, I just wanted to clarify, I'm not promising in any way that Priceline is going to do that. In fact, my contract is ending soon, but I may have some time to continue work on this completely as an independent freelancer in my own free time, and to finish this up and maybe actually contribute it in code. So I'm representing myself here, not Priceline. Just want to make it clear. But this was done for Priceline. Priceline agreed to have it shared. Now, what this is, let me show you, is there are two really different contributions. This one is a synchronization barrier. And this is specifically for a situation where somebody wants to deploy to two regions in parallel. I wrote in the motivation about why this is being done. Don't want to go into those details now. But the thing is that, let's say there's one region where we run the canary analysis, and maybe in the other we also run canary analysis, but maybe not. Maybe we have a step here that does nothing. And there's some in the description. I write exactly why there has to be a step like this. I don't want to go to those details. The thing is that there's a synchronization barrier here, so all of these regions have to go to this step before they continue. So this way, this region in this case is going to wait for this canary to finish. And if multiple regions, multiple clusters have canaries, then all of them have to finish before deployment proceeds. And this is being done as an inline rollout analysis step. So there's a plugin here. Well, shouldn't say a plugin. Basically, it's an analysis template. It's a sync barrier. And what it does is actually incredibly simple. It's a web provider. It makes a call to actually an intermediary service. This intermediary service is actually very simple. And it basically just passes traffic to the Kubernetes API of the other clusters, and it retrieves the rollout object, and then has a condition that checks a number of things, but basically checks if the current step of the rollout is the same, with a few other checks. I don't want to go to details. You can read the whole description. This is the sort of a key condition here, but there's also a check, for example, for something called a sequential number, something that needed to be added here, because we need to know which deployment is newer than another. This is something, this number is something we implemented ourselves as a sort of, basically it's a part of our script, automation script. And that's another thing that would have to be implemented, ideally somewhere in Argo, for this to become more generic. So really, my question is, and I have a list of goals here, a couple of things here. So one is that the step I provided, I mean, in the way it is currently defined is actually fine. We need a step for no operation. The reason we want that, let me just circle back to this, because in this system, we assume that rollouts have the same number of steps. This is for simplicity. I kind of described it earlier in the description. So this is why I had these no ops there. But that's a small thing that can be easily provided. But the auto generation of this sequential number, something I could discuss that maybe outside of this meeting in detail too, but I want to seek some advice about where that could be implemented, where we need to know which, let's say, if I'm deploying the same application once and then another one, I need to know which one is the newer one. So we do this, we use the render manifest pattern, so we can use this, we generate number then. There could be a way to do it in Argo. I want to ask for advice here. And this intermediary server for cluster communication, that's something very simple. Also, I want to ask, do you think that we can have another service for this? It potentially be just an Nginx proxy with configuration, or something completely different, like just a custom server, or it can be one of the existing servers. But because these clusters need to communicate, we do need some way of doing this, and we don't want the pod directly go to the Kubernetes API of the other cluster. So that's why there's intermediary. And then there is token generation management, because we need a token to connect to this server. And then this server needs to connect to the Kubernetes API. So this is really where I wanted to seek some advice. I mean, I don't expect to get all the answers today, but I wanted to ask you to read this and give some pointers about what would be the best way to implement this in a generic way. So that's one of it. And I'm going to stop here and ask if you have any questions.
What you described, it made me remember something Zach was working in the past, which is called step plugins. Maybe this is a candidate for a step plugins use case. I think one direction I would suggest is for you to reach out to Zach and confirm this use case with him and see if that is compatible with that initiative.
So
I
what I
think it
got
is.
here, I got a response from Zach here that about step plugins. Is that what you have in mind or something else?
Yes, exactly. Step plugins. Yeah.
Yeah. And there, it's still an open PR. And yeah, I can definitely communicate with Zach in more details. But these are the sort of details exactly I want to discuss, like where to put it. Do we put it under Argo Project Labs or somewhere else? And things like that.
Yeah, Argo Project Labs is a great place because we can create a repo there and you can start contributing code without too much trouble.
Got it.
And we can make this as an additional plugin for rollouts.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense.
What you describe about
Yes.
connectivity with external clusters is the piece that I didn't understand really well. Argo CD already has this mechanism to connect to clusters. The first thing that comes to my mind is leveraging that functionality instead of trying to implement something parallel to that, if possible.
Makes sense. Sure.
So yeah. But I'm not 100% sure about your use case here.
Okay, that's good. That's a good pointer. Thanks a lot. I'll look into it. Yeah, it's for us because like I'm not familiar with the internals of Argo that much. It was easiest for me just to use a separate service, right? Just to maintain separation. But if there really is something, I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, to use it. The sequential numbers I want to ask about. Basically, I need to know. I describe it in detail, but basically, there's a certain risk of a race condition which we did experience initially, where you're deploying a rollout and maybe deploying another and updating it essentially. And what may happen is that one cluster is in the progressing one version of the rollout, and another cluster is progressing an older version of the rollout, and without some sort of way of knowing which one is the newer one, they might all wait for the other. And that's what I want to avoid. So this is why we need the information, which one is newer, so that the one that is older just, quits the barrier and moves forward. So this is why some way of knowing, I mean, I can tell the way we implemented is that this number is the number of commits in our repository since the beginning. So, every new commit is a newer number. It doesn't have to be that way. Yesterday I heard about the hydrator, which also implements the same pattern that we have. So I could potentially look into that, but if it's possible to do something more generic, then it would be even better. Like maybe that already exists. I'm just not aware of it. Maybe somewhere in Argo internals, there is already a number that tells us which one is newer and which one is older. But what is important here is these are two different clusters. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating a commit that updates two different clusters. And because I want these two deployments to happen in parallel, okay? And then I make another commit that updates both clusters. I want to know one of these clusters needs to have information if what's going on in the other clusters is from the same commit or a different commit. And this is why it's a little tricky, and it may go beyond what Argo is doing now. Yeah.
Have you considered creating two totally independent Argo CD applications pointing to the same repo? And this way,
yeah, they are definitely. That's what I already have. Okay, so how does it help?
No, because it seems to me that you're trying to have a single application and a single Argo rollouts that deploys in two separate clusters.
No, these are two different applications.
Two different applications, okay. So I don't see where the race condition comes in.
Okay, I will have to go into details though, but these are two different applications, right? And but I'm making one commit that updates both clusters. Okay. And I want these two things to happen in parallel. So I want this async barrier between these two. So let's say I make one commit and and the rollout starts, and let's say one of them gets stuck for whatever reason, right? And I make another commit. Let's say region 2 already reaches this point, or the newer commit, but this one is in the same step, but for the older commit. So what I do here, I have actually I need a way to know that basically what this condition does. Maybe it's going to be easier if I show it to you. I need to, let's put it like this. I need to know if the other cluster has reached the same steps. So I need to look at the current step index, but also has done it in the same or newer rollout, right? Because if one of them is, if this one is the older, this one is newer, this one isn't supposed to wait for this one. It can't just look at the current rollout definition here and look at the step. It has to also know, is this the newer or a newer rollout, same rollout, or the same rollout? If from by same rollout, I mean coming from the same commit. It's not strictly a same rollout, but I hope you got it. Basically, the same deployment, let's call it, the same, parallel deployment, right? If it's a newer one, then I'm not supposed to wait for this guy. I'm just supposed to move forward, and so that the sync updates the rollout definition, and this starts from the beginning. This starts the new rollout, and then only if that one reaches here in the new rollout will that one say, okay, the other one is ready, and then
Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to do. So you want to have some sort of a dependency between two independent rollouts and just move forward if both are at the same stage, basically.
Yes.
In the same version, the same stage.
Yes.
Well, I think there are several different ways to achieve this. The thing that comes to my mind is maybe based on metrics. So you can configure Prometheus metrics, for example, that and then in your analysis template, configure it in a way that it checks for that particular rollout name in that particular stage. If it reached that point, I think that can be achieved with Prometheus metrics.
So I need more than the name and the step, because I also need to know which one is the newer one. That's the problem. It's not enough. These two parameters are not enough.
Well, you have the image, right? So you have the pod, and you probably have the image with the tag. So you probably want to compare tag the two tags from the Docker image.
You can't really rely on that. What if somebody like deploys what if the newer commit deploys an older image, right? That's not really the same. I mean, the image version won't always go up, right? What if somebody like deploys the same image but different configuration and just wants to update the config? I don't think you can rely on the image. Yeah, we need another identifier for this, and the solution we have, and it is working. I just want to kind of emphasize that it is that when we in the render manifest pattern, when we run the merge and push, just before the push, we actually update the manifest with the sequential number. We calculate the sequential number. It is the number of commits since the beginning of the main branch of the repo, the rendered repo, and we just fill it out. And then it's something that we can achieve that way.
Yeah, actually, I am probably gonna be bringing some like potentially bad news to this, but there are like various edge cases we need to be wary of. Like first of
Yep.
them, what if we like use different branches? And like that's like for example, that's been experience and it's still to some degrees experience at like my company that like for different clusters and different like environments, we just had separate branches. We consolidated some of that, but it's like still a common use case. And we need something kind of generic, which like if people do that, at least rollouts would not get stuck. Another edge case to watch for, what if, for example, autosync is disabled for one of applications, and then like we don't want just another rollout to just get stuck forever. Then another piece could be, yeah, you kind of was touch base in it, like what if we have like different versions of rollout, of like different versions of commit, then like what do we do? It's like becomes I think generally tricky situation because sometimes we want to progress each of them independently, sometimes we still want to have a dependency. Another edge case is like what if people manually do like something like promote full or like do like manual rollback on the rollout using like CLI, and so which can introduce all sorts of inconsistency. So I think it's just my overall impression that this feature can be like pretty complex. So we need to like just be like think of all of those edge cases and make sure like whatever implementation is there just works with those.
Thanks. Very good feedback, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, one of the difficulties here is that people have different configurations. Argo uses it in different ways. And you know, at Priceline, we have a particular configuration where these issues typically don't affect us, right? Like when you talk about different branches, for example, we don't have it. We have a monorepo with a single branch. So this is why we didn't have to worry about it. But like you're 100% right. If this was to be made generic, then yeah, these things have to be taken into account. At the very least, it has to, I know, produce an error message saying that this configuration, this combination of, you know, parameters is not supported or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can continue this discussion offline. We still have a few other discussions.
I wanted
this.
to just, this is very brief, but there's another one, and maybe I'll get
Okay.
a quick answer on this one.
Mhm.
So this is these are specific actually to a proprietary tool called New Relic that is being used at Priceline, but we've taken some, you know, significant time to create a query, or actually a couple of queries that work, I think, pretty well. We worked with New Relic support on this too, and New Relic experts within the company, and companies, you know, was happy to share it with the community. These don't require any changes to Argo rollouts. These are just basically templates somebody else could start using. And I just want to ask how to share it. Somebody suggested here maybe a community project as with a collection of analysis templates. Maybe the two could be used practically as example tools. Do you guys have some sort of suggestion where can we commit these queries, these templates?
So is this a template and it's interesting to have it reused in a certain context? Can you
I think
elaborate?
anyone who uses New Relic and wants to do canary verification can use this. There is but you see, there is a New Relic plugin available in Argo, but it doesn't really come with a query. I mean, there's a very simple query there, but that one, the one that's providing an example, assumes that you have only one endpoint within your application. This one supports multiple endpoints, right? And then uses something called FaceSet, which is like
How about adding this as a documentation as part of that project then?
Perhaps, yeah, documentation makes sense. Okay. All right.
Mitchell,
Yeah.
you have your hands raised.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just mention it here since we have a group here. I mean, I thought it might be worth exploring, like under the Argo Labs or an Argo project. Like, what if there was a community repo that collected it, you know, where people could contribute analysis templates, because then it serves that dual purpose of being a really good source of examples for people, and then it could be a curated list that people could build up around use cases And that might be, because it's community, then that way it won't like sort of bog down on me.
Yeah, one pattern I've seen. Sorry, Mitchell, I think you're cutting a bit, at least for me.
There's necessarily, that. There.
Oh, he's
Hello?
back. Yeah, no, he's cutting out for me too.
Okay. Sorry,
Sorry,
Mitchell.
Yeah.
bad Wi-Fi. Oops. Yeah,
Okay.
bad Wi-Fi. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. One other pattern that I would suggest is something like what they use in Customize that I liked a lot is having an examples folder inside the project itself. And with a brief description of what that does, that is helpful. I kind of like to have those examples and examples of how to achieve something together with the project itself. If you're saying to me that there's already a New Relic plugin available, I would add together with that project instead of creating a new repo in other project labs.
Makes sense.
Well, is there something lacking in the New Relic provider for analysis template? Like, is there something that it can be improved as opposed to this being just a webhook, or a web call? Because
So,
that jumped out to me.
yeah, so all the New Relic provider is really just it's very much like a web call. This is actually a web provider. It doesn't actually use this plugin because all the web plugin does is that instead of using JSON binding query, you have a single JSON where we private the query. But that's all it is. It's just a wrapper around web, I think, or maybe the new implementation. But all it does is it allows, instead of doing this providing this query here, you just have a fewer lines, but you still have to provide the query yourself. It doesn't have like predefined queries, and there are some examples. There's I think one example.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
But that's all, right? So I'm not saying
I-
there's anything wrong with it. It's just that if you want to do a more sophisticated query, in particular in this case, when you have multiple endpoints in an application, then you're on your own, right? And that solves this problem.
I guess I was asking, is there an opportunity to improve the New Relic plugin? Like Datadog is the same thing, right? It's just sort of a thin wrapper around making the API calls, but then at least, it does other things and unpacks things and whatnot. And so like moving to V2, for example, we improved at least the UX of using it, where now you can give like your queries in each piece, your formulas in each piece, and then have the query to join them to support the V2 API of Datadog. So I'm just wondering if like that's the opportunity here, because it's sort of confusing, or are these plugins on their way out because they're not really maintained? I mean, maybe there's a decision to be made there or something. I know we'll be able to do custom providers now as well, right? We have the plugins for that as well. But that's why I'm just sort of wondering about that. But maybe that's a different sort of bigger question.
That's actually a very good point. So this could be turned into, instead of like what someone could do, we could do maybe or something else, is take the New Relic plugin and actually, instead of having just the query being the argument, have all of these arguments to be an argument. So the query would be some kind of hidden within the plugin, because this is really an implementation detail. A user doesn't have to be exposed to all this code. They only need to be exposed to these fine-tuning arguments. So maybe that should be the interface of the user in the plugin, and the queries just in the provider code. That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all I was wondering about. I mean, maybe it's an opportunity to make a V2 of the New Relic provider if it's just no one's been giving it any love, and you think there's a better sort of UI for it, or UX for it, or interface.
Yeah, higher level, basically. Yeah.
So where is the New Relic plugin repo lives? Where is it today? Do you know?
It may
Isn't it
actually be
part-
within Argo rollouts, to be honest. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
one
I
of the
saw it, yeah.
default providers,
Oh,
right,
okay. It's the
that
old
shipped
one.
with
I see.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it. So the new one, I don't know how many new ones people have been making
know.
yet, but that's
Yeah.
it. Like now there's the architecture to use that
Correct.
plugin architecture to make providers for any of the analysis templates
Right.
or analysis
this
runs.
is- I see. Yeah, I think maybe my suggestion is, in this case, see with Zach and confirm with him if we can make this as either improve the New Relic plugin that ships together with Argo rollouts, or extract this plugin from this repo and create an Argo Project Labs to host this code and maintain it from there. I guess there's a decision that needs to be made, but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks
I'm
a lot.
guessing for backwards compatibility, it's going to be a hard sell
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I
rip
agree.
out like all of them and transition them to plugins.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's just like making a new one and declaring it deprecated. If people want the newer features, they go install the new one or whatever. But yeah.
Right.
Got it. So I can't promise I'm gonna do a lot because like I said, I'll probably be doing this after my contract ends in my own time. But what I can do, I can start with the initial idea of putting in the documentation, putting it there, and then
Cool.
yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right. Cool. Thank you, Alexander. We have one more topic. Let me get back the share. It's Alex, Hydrator.
Think then Zoom, Alex had to drop.
Sorry?
Alex M had to drop.
Oh, okay. So. Okay, so maybe we can discuss this offline. All right, so that was the last one for the day. Any last minute topic someone wants to bring up? All right, if not, have a great rest of your day, everybody, and see you next week. Thank you.
The rest of your day. Bye.
Sounds good.